Captain's Log, Episode 102, Charlie X. Air date, September 15, 1966. A powerful teenage boy wreaks havoc aboard the USS Enterprise. Welcome back aboard the USS Yellow House. I'll be your captain, Matthew Scott. Joining me today is our chief engineer, Jimmy.
My name is Jimmy. I've been through 20 years of space school, and I have been in command of the ship's engines and other essential transporting needs.
A valued crew member aboard the USS Yellow House.
I appreciate that.
Yes. And today we watched episode 2 of the original Star Trek. Now, just to start off, what were your overall thoughts on the episode?
I would say it's pretty progressive for the 1960s.
Yeah.
In terms of writing.
I mean, in some areas, I'd say.
It did have its very dull moments. I will say that.
Yeah. I'm talking specifically. Me and Carl have already, Mr. Loney, have already talked about how the way they write the characters, or they write the women characters specifically, they act like children. Like they don't act as professional and as adult as everyone else on the ship. But it's still, it's like the 60s were so progressive. But then you have this, Yeah,
it was still a very male-led time period.
There's a lot of room to grow, to say the least.
But on the other hand, it's still on a ship, and they're still being commanded by their commanders that happen to be men.
Well, yeah, that's not more what I mean. I mean just like how the women act and react to things. Like we'll eventually get to it, but when Charlie completely dismisses that girl, the girl's supposed to be like kind of his age, but if you're supposed to be like a in-training yeoman, which is basically a secretary, but you're on a starship, you should take it seriously. You don't get angry when some guy doesn't care to talk to you.
Right, she acted like a toddler, like...
Yeah, that's
if I was like, hey, let me talk to you for a minute, please excuse us.
Even if
basically
it was rude,
what he did, and she threw a tantrum.
Yeah, even if she reacted the same way he did, which maybe it's just like how they portray teenagers
they did say they were around the same age, though.
Overall, did you enjoy the episode, or did you think it was a kind of a... Because you've seen a couple episodes of
Yes,
the
I
original.
have.
Okay.
I would say that it intrigues me, and I would want to watch another episode.
Okay.
That episode in particular, probably not going to be one of my favorites.
Yeah. So, me and Carl were both dreading this episode, because I remember not liking it that much. Upon a rewatch, I liked it more. Like, there was a lot more there than I thought. The first episode, we kind of arrived at the idea that it was just kind of, compared to the original pilot, which was this really cerebral thing, the first episode of the aired series was kind of dull almost. It was like a diet version of the pilot, where it was really straightforward. It had similar aspects, but it was just really straightforward. There wasn't much to it. In this one, there's a lot of different twists and turns. Starship that is harboring Charlie drops him off with the Enterprise, because the Enterprise just so happens to be traveling in the same area as his only known relatives. Well,
I thought he was the only one aboard of the starship, and the Enterprise found him.
The ship they dropped him off with found him. So it was like the other ship found him, and they finally figured out where to take him and whatnot, and they figured out that the Enterprise was heading that way. So they kind of just were like, you kind of get the idea at the beginning that they were like sick of him and like overly happy with him leaving.
And there was 3 ships in this episode.
Counting the green at the end?
Yeah, counting the green.
I don't think they were ships. But we'll get to that, but I don't want to spoil that too quickly. Charlie is accompanied almost exclusively by like scary music, like that eerie, almost like Alien, like the movie Alien music. So it's always like putting you at an off about him.
Yeah, he definitely had the Jeffrey Dahmer vibes.
Yeah.
At one point specifically, so Captain Kirk, the Doctor, and Spock, they said that he was hungry for women. And I found that really funny.
Did they verbatim say that?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, I do remember him talking about how he felt hungry. And
Yeah.
That's the only way he could describe himself.
I mean, of course, it was in a teenager hormones,
yeah.
context, but he definitely did have some Dahmer vibes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think it literally meant hunger. I think he was so educated that he didn't have the vocabulary.
He was starved of human contact, or
only been able to talk to a robot if he talked to it. So he definitely lacked in social skills and just overall knowing how civilization worked. Which, you can't really fault him. He just survived, and they gave it. I mean, we don't get to that yet. He meets the yeoman right away, and he's like, "Is that a girl?" Because he's never even met a girl, not even on the other ship. Charlie is kind of exploring the ship, and he sees these two guys that are working together, and then one is like, "Well, see you later," and he like hits him on the ass, just like an athlete or something, kind of thing. And then like the next scene, he sees the yeoman again, and he like makes like plans to see her later. And he's like, "Oh, well, they say bye like this," so he slaps her on the ass.
Look, I'm off duty at 1400. Why don't you join me in Recreation Room 6, Deck 3?
You got a deal, friend.
Charlie?
I thought... Don't be angry, I didn't...
Obviously, there's a little bit different implications there. And he has to go talk to Kirk about it.
Yeah, he had no understanding whatsoever about why that was inappropriate.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember it just happening out of the blue watching this episode, but he literally sees it. Like, he literally sees two people doing that.
Hey, I'll put the equipment away. See you in the rec room, huh?
You got a deal, friend.
All right.
So his immediate thought is, oh, that's how they, say goodbye or whatever.
Right, and he constantly goes back to, oh, I thought this was the right thing to do, but I'm wrong all the time.
Yeah, like, he really, at the beginning, he really is earnest. He's not trying to be antagonistic. He just doesn't fit.
Right.
Kirk goes up to Spock and McCoy. McCoy's the doctor. And they have one of their classic arguments where Spock's completely thinking logically, and McCoy is always thinking from like a human aspect because he's like a doctor, so he trusts his instincts and whatnot. They establish this dynamic where those two go back and forth, and then Kirk's kind of the middleman that's like, you see, from an outside source, this is the way we should go, or whatever. So they're a good pairing for the captain.
Yeah, they all had different views on the situation and different backgrounds to
how to assess it.
Yes.
Which is why I think that they, as a team, work so well in this series as a whole. We'll eventually get to more episodes, but they're a great lead.
The captain is definitely the daddy character of the ship.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's played up specifically in this episode. With Charlie kind of looking up to him.
And then he definitely didn't want to have Charlie under his belt, so he passed it on to Dr. McCoy. Dr. McCoy was just like, no, I do not want to help this kid. This is a you problem.
You're the captain.
You're the father figure is what he said, I think.
Yeah, something like that. He said he sees you as a father or whatever. Because he says multiple times that no one liked him on the ship he was on.
Yeah.
And Kirk is like the first first person to ever really like care about or like show outwardly that he cares about Charlie in any way. So he becomes attached to him. Charlie continues following the yeoman and kind of trying to get understanding of life on the ship. And they're in this kind of like not meeting room, but like break room where they're all Spock's playing his little instrument and Uhura's singing.
This is the first sense in the episode where you see that he has some weird mind powers. And especially with the playing cards where he switched the cards to Yeoman's face and then made one appear in her cleavage.
Yeah.
She pulled one out of her cleavage, and it was like oddly sexual as well.
Well, yeah.
Which was intended, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, he's kind of testing his boundaries or whatever.
Yeah.
She doesn't question where she got these pictures. Like,
Right.
the first sense is like, that's really weird. What? And then he puts them back up and they're gone. And they're just normal cards again. And she just forgets. And she's like, oh, ha ha ha.
Yeah, the overall vibe was very creepy.
Yeah, it's I think that was clear, but definitely intentional for Charlie's character to be kind of this, you never really know what he's gonna do.
Right.
Because he is just a teenager, so he is kind of like, he will act in unexpected ways. When Uhura's singing, she keeps taking away the yeoman's attention from Charlie, and he gets fed up with it, and he just cuts her voice out, and she like can't speak at all, and she kind of freaks out, like, what?
Yeah.
And he's just like, whatever.
And nobody else really seems to take notice of the fact that she's lost her voice.
Yeah, well, I think she eventually is able to speak like pretty quickly after, but it's like, it just happens, and everyone's like, oh, I guess she's done.
Yeah, right. It was like an episode for her.
Yeah, because like that's kind of the first inkling of like his powers can be terrifying.
Yeah.
Like they can be definitely used for bad because they're seemingly unending, like what he can do. When Kirk has to explain what he did to the yeoman when the SWAT, he says.
Oh yes, he talks to him about it.
He's like.
I see. Well, there are things you can do with a lady, Charlie, that you... there's no right way to hit a woman. I mean, man to man is one thing.
And that's really all he says, and then Charlie's like, I don't get it. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
Gets a call and leaves, but he takes Charlie to the rec room, and he's like showing him how to...
It was like sparring, basically.
Yeah. He said he'd teach him how to fight, so he was like, okay, well, let me teach you how to fall correctly first, so you don't hurt yourself. And Charlie gets all, teenager upset, and is all like, oh, I don't want to do this is stupid. And he's like, just grabs some random guy sitting there, he's like, alright, we'll show him how to do it. And so on, he tries to get Charlie back into it, and Charlie kind of embarrasses himself, and the guy, Sam is his name, he starts laughing at him.
Yeah, they were sparring, and then Captain Kirk, he flipped him onto his back. Sam had a good chuckle out of it because it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean...
And then he was just being a teenager, and he was just like, I'm gonna make him disappear.
Yeah,
and then
he's gone.
Beams out of existence.
Yeah. Which is the first, like, Kirk's initial response is like, oh no.
Like,
and he immediately goes to call for security.
Yep. And then so the Charlie, he ends up breaking Spock's legs.
Yeah.
Captain Kirk has like cramps in his stomach and is like just on the ground in the fetal
that
position.
happens multiple times where he gets stopped and he's like, oh, I got a tummy ache. Ah!
And then so anytime Charlie does this attack, it's because he feels threatened. So when the security walks in the room, points the gun at him because he's just, completely disabled the captain.
Yeah.
He just makes the gun disappear.
Yeah, he's just like, gone. But every time he does his powers, he does the thing where he like crosses his eyes and looks up.
Oh yeah,
Which I think the intention is you just see the whites of his eyes, and it's supposed to be like, oh, he's using magical powers.
Yeah,
but it's so cheap that they just have him cross his eyes, and usually you can still see his eyes, so he just looks cross-eyed.
Why didn't they use contacts?
Because that would require, like a whole thing.
I suppose.
Because he has normalized, and then he moves his head, so it's supposed to...
I mean, it's close enough. It almost looks like he's having a seizure.
Yeah, I mean, if it was on like a CRT, box TV with all the grain and all that,
yeah,
it probably would look a lot better. You wouldn't notice the iris.
I guess that's also true.
Yeah, because like nobody expected you to be able to watch old Star Trek on big TV. I noticed the lighting seemed to frequently focus on Kirk and Charlie's eyes. Like the shadows weren't just on like the sides of the face or whatnot. It was specifically like Western almost, where it was
it was always a stand down like they were always like challenging each other, and up until the point, and this is a little further in the episode where he challenges the captain.
Yeah, thinking about it now, it's kind of like he's challenging to be the alpha kind of the ship. Charlie is, because the whole dad figure thing.
Mm-hmm.
He's the captain, and he must do it multiple times. He does do it at the end, and that's like the
final showdown of Dad beats his son's ass.
He just whips him across the bridge.
Yeah. When he, after the sequences of challenges that Charlie gives to the crew, eventually they lead into Spock, the Dr. McCoy, and the captain having a meeting about him.
Yeah.
And they talk about how
It's a boy in a man's body trying to be an adult, with the adolescent in him getting in the way.
And with a weapon in him, which could destroy you or anyone, anywhere on this ship.
Well, the moment he stopped, you're an authority he respects, Jim.
Agreed. The struggle must remain between you and him.
and it very much summed him up.
Yeah, he's I mean, it could kind of be said about all teenagers. They think they can take on anything because, their hormones and them growing. They feel like they're invincible. They can do anything.
They don't understand consequences.
Yeah. Because as a teenager, you don't understand it. You live.
You exist.
And then if you have magical powers that literally lets you do anything, that's
Right.
probably not good for you.
Turns a girl into a lizard.
Charlie, what's wrong?
When Kirk kind of bests him verbally and sends him off to his room, kind of, he gets rid of the guards and then he turns that lady into a lizard and he walks by this other girl who does nothing to him except walk by him. And turns her into an elderly lady and she starts freaking out.
And then he hears a group of people laughing in another room and then just completely freezes them.
Well, yeah, one comes out, one of the girls, and her face is completely flesh. You got rid of eyes, nose, and mouth. How can they even breathe?
Just completely disfigured her. And it seems that his main objective is to get to Colony 5.
Well, that's where he was headed, or that's where he was supposed to go, because that's where they said he has family. And
That's right.
Then they never bring it up when he leaves. They're like,
and they found out about his powers. Then they veered off course. He finds out about them veering off course and takes control of the helm.
Well, yeah, he does that with his mind too. So that's when he starts literally controlling all the aspects of the whole ship. Mm-hmm. Which, when Kirk, Spock, and McCoy have that little meeting in the bridge, and they're like, and Kirk gets the idea. He's like, "Oh, we just need to distract him by turning literally everything on the ship on, and then I'll fight him."
Which I didn't make much sense to me.
No, I thought it made sense.
See, I thought it was the total responsibility, which was basically his kryptonite. That he was a teenage boy, and all of a sudden he was placed in a position of being completely responsible, and so he was not able to focus on his powers or something like that.
Well, it wasn't necessary because he didn't care if all he cared about was reaching the destination. Little things that were happening, he only took control of them because they were changing things or something, like changing the course or trying to communicate to different ships or whatever. So he was shutting down communications and stuff like that. So Kirk was like, "Oh, well, if we just keep doing things he will actively be stopping us doing, then he'll be..." Because he has a certain limitation to what he can do at a certain amount of time. So that whole time he's not only is he listening into the bridge, which he's not even there, but he's controlling the bridge, controlling communications, controlling, literally everything. And so Kirk gets the idea to distract him by setting all this off, so he has to deal with all this, or else, so he's basically luring him into a trap that he'll fall for, because he's not thinking that far ahead.
Right.
Which is kind of shown when they play chess. He makes one move and Spock's like, that's wrong. And he's like, no, it's not. And then Spock instantly wins in one move.
And then he just melts the chess pieces.
Yeah, he gets so angry.
And then he gets reprimanded
for
the melting the chess pieces.
Like, how did you do that? And he's like, I didn't do that. I don't remember what he says.
I noticed that quite frequently he would just randomly enter and exit as he pleased every room, and in every scene he would just appear and then just be like, nope, I'm done with this, and then just walk away.
Yeah, I think that was part of his him not knowing social cues and social, just socializing.
That would make sense.
Like he walks in, he doesn't say hi to anybody. Like people say hi to him, and he just looks at him and then walks away. He just doesn't understand that. Oh, also in that meeting with Spock and Kirk and McCoy. So Spock first is like, the boy is dangerous. We should just neutralize him or something.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what McCoy says, but I can imagine he said he's just a kid or something. But Kirk, Kirk's the one that says, oh, he's just a kid. We just gotta, and that's when they say that line you brought up.
Mm-hmm.
And then he kind of recontextualizes the issue here. It's not an evil mastermind they're dealing with. It's a kid with ultimate power, basically.
Yeah. So another thing I noticed was that Charlie thought of everything as a game.
I wrote that down too. I was literally about to say that.
Everything was from the point of playing chess onward, that's what he thought adults did. And so he kind of I don't know how to explain it, but...
Yeah, he anything they did, even if it was literally fighting over the ship, he just saw it as a game.
Mm-hmm.
What else did I write around that? Yeah, so when that whole thing when he kind of tries to stand up to Kirk and Kirk bests him and tells him to go to his room or whatever, he acts like he lost a game. And
he's like, you might have won this round.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And later he starts taking control of people. So when Spock tries to communicate to other people on the ship, he just starts singing nursery rhymes.
Yeah, that's right.
And he rightfully so says, I think he's funny. Because, Spock's the super serious straight man guy. And then he's singing all these silly little songs every time he tries to say something serious.
Yeah, it was weird because his mind power goes from making people disappear, turning them into lizards, and then all of a sudden Spock is just singing nursery rhymes.
Yeah, he can literally control their whole thing.
Their whole body, their mind.
Spock is all about being completely emotionless because he's half Vulcan.
Yeah.
And Charlie even says, oh, I can make him laugh and smile and blah, blah, blah. It's
what was the insult he called Spock? It was something long
elf ears.
Elf ears?
Yeah, he said,
What's going on here? Spock calls me to the bridge and then goes into some kind of poetry.
See to her, Doctor.
Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary.
Very nice, Mr. Ears.
But around that same time, they have to turn off the communications. He makes it explode. And Uhura jumps out of her seat and there's this big explosion. She's like, I just fixed those. What? This should not happen.
No, she said she had just checked the circuit connections or something. And then I was thinking you're not an electrician or anything.
No, yeah, she is.
She is?
So she wears red, so that's the mechanical or...
Oh, okay.
Because she's a communications officer, so she knows how to run all the techno-babble. So it was probably just some, good words that sounded well together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, I thought that worked with what her duties would be as a communications officer, because it's all, I don't know, it's 1960s technology, but what they think would be in 200 years.
Right.
So it's you know, like there's that 70s, 80s era of sci-fi that's kind of ingrained like as the retro futurism.
Yeah.
This is even before that, so it's like it's closer to like the 50s kind of idea of sci-fi where everything looks really sleek and there's no like visual technical way of how it's made. It just looks good and it works.
Well, it's like, I would call it like almost like progressive sci-fi. Like this, it's no longer written in a book as fiction. It's put on a TV screen with actual actors, and you have to have actual
physical
effects
thing.
and set design and
and they
comes with that.
With this whole set design, they keep it pretty simple. Like it's all colorful with all like the reds and blues and all that. But I don't know. I always thought the control panels at least still look believable as like there's enough buttons and like things that they could be doing on that ship. About halfway through, I thought about this. That Charlie is like what I assumed the audience, like the target audience for Star Trek would be. Like, yeah, you get like some of the adults that are kind of into sci-fi, but I feel like a majority is like that young teenager, like kid watching.
Mm-hmm.
So Charlie being like this kid that has to learn what it is to grow up and like certain things that you can't, that are wrong in society and all that. Especially for like, because you know the stereotype is like nerdy outcast kid.
Right.
So this kind of, and we said it during the thing that Charlie is like the first incel.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're trying to get these kids to not be evil women haters just because the women don't like them. I think it's a good story for what I assume to be the target audience.
And the target audience at the time definitely would have been that around that age period.
Yeah,
because anybody watching TV at that time as a grown adult would be watching TV
like
after 5 when they get home from work, and it would be the news or some
and I think this
game
was
show.
like this must have been like a not late night, but like 7-8 o'clock because it was on NBC at the time.
You definitely have to have an imagination to be able to keep up with it.
It was probably around like when science fiction theater was on TV. And whenever that was on, I think that must have been.
What year was this episode again?
66.
66. Was this after the moon landing?
Nope.
Nope.
So this whole show, I mean, the last season takes place or doesn't take place, but they did in '69, and that's when it happened. So all of this is before we even made it to space, or onto the moon and into space, not So it's kind of interesting, like. Even before we made it to the moon, they were already like seeing past that. It's like
they're imagining what space.
But
is,
it was
what it's like.
it was the space age. So the whole the idea of the '60s was already looking towards that, and this is kind of cashing in on that. Kirk's arc, well, we kind of touched on where he's like nice to Charlie, but he clearly doesn't want to be a father figure, and like he doesn't know how to be a dad.
Well, one, it's not really his job. He is the captain of the ship, and he has to control the ship. Secondly, he just doesn't want to deal with it.
Yeah. It's kind of given as like a character flaw that Kirk isn't perfect. He can best Spock in a chess game from time to time. He can be as competent as he is, but in this specific area that it would really help to be like good in. He just doesn't know how to talk to a kid.
And this was brought up in the conversation that he had with Charlie, that Charlie was saying that he didn't really know how to talk with women. And then Kurt himself said something similar of, I have not gotten that down yet either.
Yeah,
he's busy with his, career as a captain, and he doesn't have the time for it.
Yeah, and he also said, he says something like, I feel pain or something all over.
Oh yeah,
and then Kirk's like, you'll live.
Yeah, he said that. That was a weird scene because he was just like, you'll get through this. This is a normal teenage thing to go through.
Yeah, he's like, every man in the species since the first model came out has dealt with this. Which, it's like yeah, it's like talking to a teenager that's going through this in the moment.
Right.
It must be.
He thinks it's the end of the world, and then if you can't get over this little hump in life, he ought to just not exist, basically.
Yeah.
What would you even call the?
It's like their alarm.
No, it's not the alarm. It's when it, like on the intercom. It's the intercom sound.
Oh yeah, where like
That's
it
what
comes
happens.
right before. Yeah, it's basically like an alert, like almost like a text alert.
So I noticed that when the captain was summoned by the intercom, the noise that it made was a whistle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually the same whistle sound that the Navy uses, which is called the bosun's whistle. Which is kind of an interesting fact because it is a naval ship.
Yeah,
it's just in space. Yeah.
Yeah, I that detail was obviously I would never pick up on that. But yeah, it gives the setting a sense of realism that even if you don't know, it's like, I don't know, it makes sense why there'd be that kind of a whistle.
It gives that military aspect to
Yeah.
it, that it's still a Navy and it still ran like a Navy.
Yeah, they're not necessarily an army or anything. They're not like it's just what the natural progression of what that would eventually become. The ending is quite strange, the way they handle getting rid of Charlie, because you get to the point where they run out of things to do, and then they get a message from these green space people, which when they said where they were from, I thought they were the people that dropped Charlie off, but they were in a ship.
Yeah,
They
a
weren't
ship
green.
that appeared out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden this guy's face manifests on the deck of...
Well, I don't think they're in a ship. Those green, I think they're like spirits or something.
I thought it was like a hologram type of deal.
He said they don't feel, and they.
that they don't feel love.
Well, that and they don't feel at all. Like he's not physically present. It's just like that hologram thing. So he shows up and he's like, "We'll take him back. We did this thing to him." And they just do that.
That would make
really set
sense
up.
why he's socially awkward and stuff, because when he says they don't love, and he's been like on that ship, and there's like, it would make sense why he's socially awkward. He's talking to these weird computer.
Yeah, he has to
faces.
live with some like not humans, and obviously he isn't really human. I guess I don't know. He might be. I don't know.
His clothes were very weird at the beginning before they gave him a uniform or anything.
Yeah, that's just his whatever clothes.
His attire.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought that was so out of place, like out of nowhere. It just happened. Green people show up and we're like, everything has been reversed to at the beginning of the episode. So it's like nothing happened.
Yeah, it's like
gotcha. You could have just skipped this one. Which I think must be why I didn't like it, because it just ends and it sucks.
Yeah, the ending was not done very well.
No. Yeah, it's so weird. They just, and especially for, I guess it's their second episode, but I don't know. It seemed very weird how they just ran out of ideas, seemingly. But besides that, I liked the ideas presented in the episode, and they may have not concluded in a great way, but it was interesting what they were doing. Yeah, I mean, I don't
know. They had a good idea for the writing of it. They just did not have a good conclusion at all. They did not know how to end it. With him beaming everybody away, and then
they just
all of a sudden they just reappear.
Yeah, which I think was what the green people did. They were just like, we fixed it. They're all alive now.
And he seems to have the same powers as the green face guy.
Yeah, they must have just somehow imbued their powers onto him, which is how he survived whatever alone. That part's kind of inconsistent too. They say they found him and he grew up alone, and it kind of revealed that the way he survived by like finding food, he just created it out of thin air.
Right. Well, he said there was like plants growing on the ship or something, and then he ate that.
But then McCoy's like, No,
Spock said that's not possible, and he was arguing with McCoy about why it's impossible for him to survive.
Oh yeah, and then McCoy's like, well, there could be more. Scans sometimes are wrong. And he's like, really?
Yeah, that's not conclusive at all.
Yeah, McCoy's just trying to find a realistic answer, and Spock's like, this does not compute at all.
I don't know, there's just really not a realistic answer in this episode for why he exists.
Yeah, they just
there's no backstory
really,
for him at all, really.
It's a really thin thing they're hanging everything on.
Which is, I think it's also the point, though, because it's like you're in the same view as the crew on the ship of how he just appears, and so you're going through there.
You don't need to like show what he was doing on the planet by himself,
right,
on the ship or whatever. That is kind of what I like about how it's serialized. Almost every episode you can just kind of jump in and it gives you enough to play off of. Maybe you don't know every character's name, but you got Kirk and Spock, and that's about all you need.
And it's like the episode is basically based off of the captain's log. That's kind of the point of it, I think.
I do like that too, how they always introduce it like that. And sometimes when Kirk doesn't start off on the ship, if he's somewhere else, they have like Spock and then Scotty, which we haven't had show up yet. He's technically third in command after Spock. So sometimes when Spock and Kirk are gone, it's him up there.
Yeah.
So technically you're third in command of the ship. Getting to the end, I realized why I didn't like it as much. But I don't know, it's hard to recommend this one, because there's definitely better episodes that can get you in it. But from the perspective of a person watching it in the 60s on TV, especially if you were the age of Charlie's character, it definitely would be like an interesting episode to watch. Would you recommend it? I mean, we kind of said at the beginning, but now that we went through it, would you recommend it to a person like a person that would be watching this show, which is most likely a person that's never seen Star Trek and is just kind of scrolling through YouTube?
No, it's a very awkward episode, I think.
Yeah.
It definitely does not keep my attention as well as I would like. The story is interesting.
Yeah.
It is. But there are more better written episodes, I would say, that I would recommend. Star Trek does get pretty weird with, they'll go to like the mobsters planet or the Nazi planet. Of course it'll be more fun and adventurous with those. And that's another thing. This episode the entire episode was set on the ship. Yeah, they didn't go to a planet. Yeah.
There are a couple episodes like that, because the ship is so massive and so many different rooms. So I don't know. I mean, it also might be because when they go onto planets, it's obviously a set with a painted background. And
it's probably all done in California too.
Well, yeah, if they go outside, they usually go to like the California desert. And they got that classic one where Kirk runs up the rock,
the boulders and
which is like their only outside location. Every other time, it's on a set that has like a painted alien sky.
Yeah.
But this one, I guess I didn't even realize that this one completely took place on the ship.
The only other shots that were not on the ship were just of other ships or of space.
Yeah, of space, which would be just all models.
Which makes sense, though, because when traveling through space...
Yeah, you don't always have the time to do a land mission.
They were going from point A to point B.
And that must have been for the studio, that must have been kind of like a budgetary thing. They were just like, hey, we can make some episodes that don't leave the ship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, well, for one of the first episodes, it also sets a standard for what the ship looks like and how it functions.
Yeah.
How they have the rec room.
They really have a sparring area.
The gym. That's what they call it.
Yeah,
the gym.
Whatever it was. They have all those, like that guy that's just, his weights is just levers on the wall.
Yeah.
And then the feet thing where they use that multiple times throughout the show.
Yeah, he's literally just pumping.
That's how they do it.
The two guys in the background, as they were sparring in the gym, had these like weird weighted
Q-tip things. what was that, like American Gladiator or whatever?
Why didn't they have Spock try to do the Vulcan neck move on him?
I don't think it was created yet.
It just wasn't a thing. I mean, it was like the second or third episode.
Yeah, I haven't seen it happen yet in our retrospective so far.
Did they even have him do this thing?
No, that's a thing in that episode I was talking about in season 2. Well, thank you, Jimmy, for taking the time out of your heavy schedule to join me for this stupid little show I do.
Well, it was very much fun watching the episode and discussing.
Well, I hope you learned a lot about engineering in the past, because these are historical documents. I don't know if I expressed that thoroughly enough, but these are historical documents that could teach you how to do your job better.
Can I use this as a reference on my resume?
Thank you all for joining us on our third voyage on the USS Yellow House. It has been a great time with all these episodes we watched, and there will be plenty of more.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, for having me on and allowing me to discuss this with you.
Oh, yes.
With this amazing audience that actually tunes in and watches.
This live studio audience we have, they don't applaud when the applaud sign turns on, but we love them anyway.
I'm gonna go home and cry now.
Good night, everybody. Click the links. There's one by his feet, and there's one by my
over
feet.
there, yeah.
And then there's also channel links above us. That one takes you to the Yellow House channel.